behalf of the Chris Point Light Historical Society Board of Directors, I would like to thank everyone for coming today to honor the memories and service of James Burton Hunter, who was a life-saving station keeper at Chris Point, and Philip F. Eby, who was a first assistant lighthouse keeper at Chris Point. We would also like to thank William Hamlin from Oscoda Township for his help in finding the grave sites and allowing us to have this ceremony today. Also to Marcia and Carl Jan for their assistance with this ceremony and for braving out the heat today in the wool lighthouse service uniform. Finally, we would like to thank the United States Coast Guard for sending a representative and for offering a tour of their boat at the Oscoda boat launch following this ceremony. Okay. Carl.
I can go on forever about lighthouses, but we'll start with the beginning. We'll go all the way back to 1789 in our second Congress, the 9th Act, that started the lighthouse establishment, which my uniform is. And then in the 1850s there was some turmoils in that, and Kimball took over and put some direction to everything, and so that everything would be being done the same way. But these guys lived a very lonely life out there. They had to work hard. They had to climb the towers every 3 to 4 hours to put oil back in the towers, and then in the morning, while they were up there, they had to do their log, and the log consisted of looking out over the lake, looking for ship lights. If he seen ship lights, he'd mark it in the log. He'd also tell you the wind direction, if it was clear outside or cloudy, raining. Had to do this every 3 to 4 hours because they only give you enough oil to burn that long to make sure you go up to do your job. So in the morning, they had to clean all those windows on the inside because we're burning oil. So they had to clean all the windows, all the brass, and all the lenses. And the only thing that ever touched these lenses was pure alcohol and pure linen. Nothing else ever touched the lenses. And then by 10 o'clock in the morning, they also had to put up curtains. So if you get into a tower and you look up between the panes of the windows, you'll find hooks. And those hooks were for curtains. And the reason for doing that was that the lens is a prism, and by the time the sun gets to over the horizon and gets up to a certain angle, they could start forest fires. The second reason is if you see a lot of the lenses today, most of them look yellow. They're crystal glass. They should be clear as glass of water, okay? And they're not. They're yellow. And nothing against Coast Guard now. But when the Coast Guard took over, man hours were getting more and more costly. And they were coming up with electric lights. They weren't going to be needing these as long as they were thinking they were going to be changing them out. So they never put the curtains in that up. And they started cleaning them like every other day or once a week, until it was, once a month you used to go out and do them? With electric lights, you didn't have to do it near as often. And then once a year, that tower would have to be whitewashed. And somebody has to go down that rope and do it.
Wow.
So they had many, many duties that they had to do, along with providing for their family. Now, if they took a wife and they took children on, okay, the U.S. government only give you provisions with your salary for you. So all the rest of the money to feed your family had to come within. They had to grow a garden, they had to fish, and in the wintertime, they would go logging. So they had a very rough life out there, very lonely life if they were alone, because not all the lights had an assistant like Chris Point did. So, and they also helped in saving lives when the boats would go down and stuff like that. if it was close to their station, they would go out. And I always refer to most all the light keepers and the um, life-saving crew as they were our first responders, and they need to be recognized. And that's why we do what we do today. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're up.
Afternoon, everybody. Petty Officer Lario with the Coast Guard. I have just a quick bio for each of the men here. For James Burton Hunter, he was with the life-saving station keeper at Chris Point from November 17, 1897 until his resignation on June 8, 1904. He was the father-in-law of Chris Point Lighthouse First Assistant Keeper Philip F. Eby. Philip married Keepers Hunter's daughter, Mary B. Hunter. He also served as a surfman at Middle Island, Michigan, at the life-saving station located there. James was born April 7, 1856 in Blackburn, England. He married Annie Laurie Verman and had one son named John that was born 1888 but passed away June 23, 1889. James passed away on January 28, 1933 in Oscoda, Michigan. James, Annie, and John were buried in their family's plot at Pinecrest Cemetry in Oscoda, Michigan. Philip F. Eby was a first assistant lighthouse keeper at Crisp Point Lighthouse 1815 or 1816 until his death or shortly before. He also was a second assistant lighthouse keeper at La Pointe Lighthouse in Wisconsin from 1913 to 1915. He was the son-in-law of past Crisp Point life-saving station keeper James Burton Hunter. Philip married Keepers Hunter's daughter, Mary B. Hunter. Together they had a daughter named Margaret Jean Eby, 1913 to 1998. Philip was born on April 17, 1866 in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, although his grave marker says he was born in 1870, and died May 16, 1919 on Oscoda, Michigan. Philip was buried in his family's plot in Pinecrest Cemetery in Oscoda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any family members?
Yes, on behalf of the family, I would like to thank everyone for everything they've done, for coming out today, for all the work you've done behind the scenes. We especially want to thank Cameron for all his dogged persistence of tracking down information and photographs and establishing the web pages. Through all your efforts, the stories of Captain Hunter and Eby will live on forever, and we so appreciate that. We also want to tell you in all honesty that as grateful and as honored as we are,
Ask them to mute themselves.
April, can you mute yourself, please?
Sure.
Thank you. As grateful and as honored as we are that all this has happened today, we wanted to let you know that this is only the second most interesting discovery that we made in our genealogical research. We started our research about 5 years ago on all sides of our family, and the Hunters and Ebys are on my dad's side of the family, and discovering two lighthouse keepers was very exciting. But first place for most interesting discovery goes to my mother's side, where we uncovered a murder for hire conspiracy. We do not expect any ceremonies or markers for that. This is it. We thank you very much. Again, we are so honored and grateful for everything you have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. That would be interesting.
Okay, I'm Rick with the president of the Crisp Point Light Historical Society, and I'd like to present this plaque to Mr. Eby today in this here little ceremony. We're going to put it in place. It's almost straight.
in,
help
in
people in
their
trouble.
in their small 24, 26-foot boats, and 6 and 7 people in it would row out in 15, 16-foot seas to save lives. And their motto was, "We have to go out. We do not need to